The stars looked different from the bridge of the Dominion's edge. Captain Vextar had seen many star systems during his long career with the Zilithian hegemony, but this one felt strange. The yellow star burned brightly in the center, surrounded by several small worlds. His science officer had called it Sol, based on the primitive radio signals they had detected. "Captain, we have contact," announced Commander Zilhan from the sensor station. Her 4 arms moved quickly across the control panels. "Unknown vessel detected at the edge of the system." Vextar stood up from his command chair. His tall, thin body moved with the grace that all Zilithians possessed. Their species had evolved on a low-gravity world, making them elegant but fragile compared to most other life forms they had encountered. "Show me," he ordered. The main screen lit up with an image of the detected ship. Vextar stared at it with growing confusion. The vessel looked crude, almost primitive. It was made of basic metal that reflected light in a dull gray manner. The ship's design was simple and boxy, with none of the flowing curves that marked advanced civilization. "Analysis?" Vextar asked. "The vessel appears to be approximately 800 meters in length," Zilhan reported. "Basic metal construction, possibly iron and steel alloys. I detect fusion reactors for power, but they seem very simple compared to our quantum generators. Weapons? Several turrets visible on the hull. They appear to be kinetic weapons, projectile launchers of some kind. Very primitive technology, Captain." Vextar nodded slowly. This matched what they had expected when they first detected the radio signals from this system. The transmissions had been simple electromagnetic waves, the kind that civilizations used in their early space age. The Zilithian hegemony had encountered dozens of such primitive species during their expansion across the galaxy. "Begin deep scan procedures," Vextar commanded. "I want to know everything about this vessel and its crew." The Dominion's Edge was one of the most advanced ships in the Zilithian fleet. Its exotic matter scanners could penetrate almost any material and analyze it down to the molecular level. The technology was based on quantum field manipulation, something that primitive species could not even detect, let alone block. "Deep scan initiated," Zilhan announced. The process took several minutes. Vextar waited patiently, thinking about how this encounter would unfold. The pattern was always the same. They would scan the primitive vessel, demand surrender, and the aliens would submit once they realized how outmatched they were. Some species tried to fight at first, but they never lasted long against Zilithian technology. "Captain, I'm getting some unusual readings," Zilhan said, her voice uncertain. "Explain." "The ship's computer systems are strange. They appear to be built from basic materials, but they're processing information at incredible speeds. The quantum calculations should be impossible with their technology level." Vextar frowned. "Scanner malfunction?" "I don't think so, sir. I'm running diagnostics now, but the equipment appears to be functioning normally." "Continue the scan. Focus on the crew areas." More time passed. Vextar could see that his science officer was becoming more troubled as the data came in. Other bridge crew members began to gather around the sensor station, looking at the readings with confusion. "Captain," Zilhan said finally, "you need to see this." The main screen changed to show internal scans of the alien vessel. Vextar saw corridors and rooms filled with bipedal creatures. They walked on 2 legs and had 2 arms, similar to Zilithians, but much more robust. Their bodies were thick and muscular, built for strength rather than grace. "These are the creatures that built this ship?" Vextar asked. "Yes, sir. But, Captain, look at these biological readings." The screen showed detailed scans of the alien bodies. Vextar stared in growing amazement. The creatures had multiple redundant organ systems. If one kidney failed, they had another. If their heart stopped, they had backup circulation systems. Their bones were incredibly dense, and their muscle tissue showed signs of being able to function even under extreme stress. "This is impossible," whispered Commander Theklon, the ship's medical officer. No species evolves this much redundancy unless... Unless what? Vextar demanded. Unless they come from a death world, Captain. A planet so hostile that only the strongest survive. The bridge fell silent. Death worlds were rare in the galaxy. Most intelligent life evolved on peaceful planets with stable climates and few natural dangers. The Zilithians themselves came from such a world, which was why they had been able to develop their advanced technology and philosophy. "Continue scanning," Vexatar ordered, though his voice was less confident than before. The deep scan revealed more disturbing details. The alien ship's medical bay contained equipment designed to treat radiation poisoning, explosive decompression, severe burns, and traumatic injuries. The weapons storage areas held not just the simple projectile weapons they had detected, but also backup systems, repair equipment, and ammunition designed for extended combat. "Captain," Zilhan said, "I'm detecting something else. The ship's hull isn't just basic metal. It's a composite material with multiple layers. The outer layer appears simple, but underneath there are materials I can't fully identify." "What do you mean?" "The scanning beam is being absorbed and redirected in ways that shouldn't be possible. It's like the hull is designed to confuse our sensors." Vextar felt a chill run through his body. In all their encounters with primitive species, nothing like this had ever happened. The aliens always used simple materials that were easy to scan and analyze. "Sir," called the communications officer, "we're receiving a transmission from the alien vessel." "Put it through." The screen flickered and showed the interior of the alien ship's bridge. A creature sat in the center chair, smaller than the others, but clearly in command. Unlike the tall, graceful Zilithians, this alien was compact and solid-looking. Its skin was a light brown color, and hair grew from the top of its head. "This is Captain Sarah Chen of the United Earth ship Perseverance," the alien said in a calm, clear voice. "You are in Terran space. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions." Vextar was surprised by the alien's directness. Most primitive. Species were afraid when they first encountered Zilithian ships. This captain showed no fear at all. "I am Captain Vextar of the Zilithian hegemony," he replied. "Your vessel will prepare to be boarded for inspection." The alien captain tilted her head slightly. "I'm afraid I can't allow that, Captain Vextar. This is a military vessel of the Terran Federation. Any attempt to board without permission would be considered an act of war." "Act of war?" Vextar laughed. "Your primitive weapons are no match for our technology. Submit now, and your crew will not be harmed." Captain Chen's expression didn't change. "Captain, I think there's been a misunderstanding. The Perseverance is a patrol cruiser, not an exploration vessel. We are armed and ready to defend ourselves, if necessary." "Your kinetic weapons cannot penetrate our shields," Vexatar said confidently. "Our kinetic weapons?" Chen smiled slightly. "Captain, you've been scanning us for the last 15 minutes. I assume your sensors are quite advanced. Did they detect all of our weapon systems?" Vextar looked at Zilhan, who quickly checked her readings. "Sir, I'm only detecting the projectile launchers we identified earlier." Chen nodded. "That's what I thought. Captain Vextar, I strongly recommend that you withdraw from this system. This encounter is being recorded and transmitted to Terran Command. Any hostile action against a Federation vessel will result in immediate military response." "Impossible," Vextar said. "We detect no other ships in this system." "Are you certain about that?" Chen asked quietly. Something in her tone made Vextar uncomfortable. He turned to his tactical officer. "Full sensor sweep of the system. Look for any hidden vessels." The officer worked quickly, but after several minutes he shook his head. "Nothing, Captain. The system appears empty except for their ship and ours." Chen was still watching them calmly. "Captain Vextar, this is your final warning. Withdraw from Terran space immediately, or we will consider your presence a hostile act." Vextar had heard enough. No primitive species had ever spoken to the E. Zilithian hegemony with such confidence, it was time to show these aliens their place in the galaxy. Target their engines, he ordered. Minimum power. We'll disable them and then board. The Dominion's Edge turned its main plasma cannon toward the human ship. The weapon charged quickly, drawing power from the ship's quantum generators. Fire! Vextar commanded. The plasma beam lanced out across space, striking the human vessel's hull near the engine section. Vextar expected to see the ship's power fail and its engines shut down. Instead, the beam seemed to spread across the hull like water, dissipating harmlessly. The human ship continued moving normally, showing no signs of damage. "What happened?" Vextar demanded. I don't know, sir," the tactical officer stammered. Direct hit, but no effect. On the screen, Captain Chen was still watching them. "Thank you for that demonstration, Captain Vexitar. Now you understand why I recommended withdrawal." Vexitar stared at the human captain, finally beginning to realize that his assumptions about this primitive species might be completely wrong. Captain Vexitar stared at the view screen in disbelief. The plasma cannon that could melt through the hull of any known ship had done nothing to the human vessel. The beam had simply spread across the surface and vanished, like water poured on. "Hot metal. Run a full diagnostic on the primary weapon system," he ordered. "Already done, sir," replied the tactical officer. "All systems are functioning normally. The plasma beam fired at full strength." "Then how is their ship undamaged?" "Commander." Zilhan looked up from her scanner station. "Captain, I'm detecting some kind of metamaterial in their hull composition. The outer layer appears to be designed to disperse energy weapons." "Impossible," Vextar muttered. "Primitive species don't have metamaterials." On the screen, Captain Chen continued to watch them with that same calm expression. She didn't look surprised by their weapon's failure. In fact, she looked like she had been expecting it. "Captain Vextar," Chen said, "I gave you fair warning. Your attack has been logged and transmitted to Fleet Command. You now have approximately 6 minutes before additional Terran forces arrive." "You're bluffing," Vextar replied. "Our sensors show no other ships in the system." Chen tilted her head slightly. "Your sensors are quite advanced, I'm sure. But they're designed to detect the kind of technology your people use. Different civilizations develop different solutions to the same problems." Vexitar didn't like the way she said that. There was confidence in her voice that spoke of hidden knowledge. No primitive captain should sound so sure of themselves when facing a superior force. "Sir," called the communications officer, "incoming transmission from Fleet Admiral Kethvar." Vextar grimaced. The Fleet Admiral was his direct superior and didn't like being disturbed during routine operations. "Put him through." The screen split to show Admiral Kethvar's angular face. Like all Zilithians, he was tall and thin, with pale blue skin and large, dark eyes. "Captain Vextar, explain why you are engaging unknown aliens without authorization." "Sir, we encountered a primitive vessel and demanded their surrender according to standard first contact protocols. They refused, and we fired a warning shot." "Warning shot?" Admiral Kethvar's voice rose. "You fired on an unknown species during first contact? Have you lost your mind?" "Admiral, the species is clearly primitive. Basic metal construction, simple fusion power, kinetic weapons. They pose no threat to the hegemony." "Then why are you having difficulty with them?" Vextar hesitated. "There have been some unexpected developments." On the other half of the screen, Captain Chen was listening to their conversation with obvious interest. "Admiral," she said politely, "if I may interrupt?" Admiral Kethvar stared at her in surprise. Most primitive species were terrified when they saw Zilithian authority figures. This human seemed merely curious. "I am Captain Sarah Chen of the Terran." "Federation Navy," she continued. "Your subordinate fired on my ship without provocation. Under Terran military law, this constitutes an act of war." "Act of war?" Admiral Kethvar laughed. Captain Chen, your entire species has been contacted for the first time. You have no concept of the forces arrayed against you. Actually, Admiral, this isn't first contact, Chen replied calmly. We've been aware of your species for some time. This encounter was specifically arranged to test your capabilities and intentions. The bridge of the Dominion's edge fell silent. Vextar felt his blood run cold. What do you mean? Chen smiled slightly. The Terran Intelligence Service has been monitoring various alien civilizations for the past 50 years. Your expansion pattern suggested you would eventually reach our territory. We wanted to understand your military doctrine and technology before that happened. 50 years? Admiral Kethvar's voice was sharp. Impossible. Your species only achieved spaceflight recently. According to the radio signals you detected, yes, Chen agreed. But those signals were deliberately broadcast to give that impression. Our actual technological development has been different from what you might expect. Vextar looked at his science officer. Zilhan, is this possible? Captain, I've been analyzing their ship's construction while we've been talking. The more I study it, the more complex it becomes. What appeared to be simple metal construction is actually incredibly sophisticated. Their hull isn't just armor. It's a system designed to interact with different types of energy. Explain. The outer layer dissipates energy weapons like our plasma cannons. But there are additional layers underneath. Some appear designed to stop kinetic projectiles, others to deflect particle beams. It's like they built their ship to defend against every possible weapon type. Admiral Kethvar studied Captain Chen carefully. Even if your technology is more advanced than it appears, you are still one ship against our entire fleet. One ship? Chen's smile widened. Admiral, you've been scanning this system for over an hour. Are you absolutely certain there's only one Terran vessel here? Vextar spun around to face his tactical officer. Complete sensor sweep. Maximum range and sensitivity. The officer's hands flew over his controls. Minutes passed as the ship's sensors examined every asteroid, moon, and piece of space debris in the system. Nothing, Captain. Just their ship and our fleet. Are you sure? Chen asked quietly. Your scanners are designed to detect ships using technology similar to your own. Exotic matter cores, quantum field generators, plasma weapons. What if someone built ships using completely different principles? Such as, Admiral Kethvar demanded, simple fusion reactors that run cold, hulls made from ordinary metals that don't reflect active scans, weapons that don't require exotic matter or quantum fields. Chen paused. What if someone built warships using only technology that your people would consider primitive? Vextar felt a chill run down his spine. Zilhan, recalibrate the sensors. Look for cold fusion signatures, basic metal alloys, anything that might be hiding in the background radiation. Sir, that would take hours. There's so much natural background noise. Do it anyway. Chen watched them work with obvious amusement. You know, Captain Vextar, your attack actually helped us complete our analysis of your weapons. Our hull sensors recorded the complete energy signature of your plasma cannon. Frequency, power output, quantum resonance patterns, very useful data. Why would you need that information? Admiral Kethvar asked suspiciously. Because knowledge is power, Admiral. The more we understand about your technology, the better we can defend against it, and the better we can design our own weapons to defeat it. The tactical officer looked up from his station. Sir, I'm detecting some anomalies in the asteroid belt. The readings are very faint, but there might be something there. Show me. The main screen shifted to display the asteroid field on the far side of the system. At first, Vextar saw nothing unusual. Then, slowly, shapes began to emerge from the background. They were barely visible, hidden among the rocks and ice. How many? He whispered. I'm counting at least 12 contacts, sir. Possibly more. Chen nodded approvingly. 16, actually. The other 4 are using deeper concealment. They won't Show up on your sensors unless they want to. 16 ships? Admiral Kethvar's voice was tight with tension. How long have they been there? Since before you entered the system, Chen replied. We've been tracking your fleet since you crossed into Terran space. Did you really think we would let unknown aliens approach our home system without preparation? Vextar stared at the tactical display. 16 hidden ships, all in positions that would give them clear shots at his fleet. His 5 vessels were surrounded, and he hadn't even known it. This is impossible, he said. Our intelligence reports indicated this was a primitive species. Your intelligence was based on the information we allowed you to gather, Chen explained, patiently. Radio signals, primitive spacecraft designs, basic technology demonstrations. We wanted you to underestimate us. Why? Because underestimation is a tactical advantage. If your enemies think you're weak, they make mistakes. They take risks they wouldn't normally take. They reveal their capabilities while keeping their guard down. Admiral Kethvar was studying the tactical situation with growing alarm. Captain, Chen, what do you want? What I want, Admiral, is for your fleet to withdraw from Terran space immediately. You fired on one of our ships without provocation. Under normal circumstances, that would mean war. Under normal circumstances. We're prepared to overlook this incident as a misunderstanding, provided you leave now and don't return without proper diplomatic authorization. Vextar couldn't believe what he was hearing. You're giving us terms? You're still outnumbered. Am I? Chen asked. Zilhan, run one more scan. This time, look for quantum signatures that match your own technology. The science officer's hands trembled as she worked the controls. After a few moments, she looked up with terror in her eyes. Captain, I'm detecting 3 more ships. Large ones. They're using technology similar to ours, but different. Different how? I think they're ships we've encountered before, sir. Ships from other species. But they've been modified with human technology. Chen nodded. The Terran Federation has made contact with several of your former enemies, Captain. Species that you conquered and absorbed into your empire. Some of them were quite eager to share information about Zilithian technology and tactics. Admiral Kethvar stared at the tactical display for a long moment. 19 enemy ships surrounded his small fleet of 5 vessels. The humans had turned what should have been a simple first contact into a military nightmare. Captain Chen, the Admiral said finally, you expect us to simply retreat? The Zilithian hegemony does not flee from primitive species. Chen's expression hardened slightly. Admiral, with respect, you're not fleeing from a primitive species. You're making a tactical withdrawal from a superior force. There's a difference. Superior? Vexatar couldn't keep the anger out of his voice. Your ships are still built from basic metals and simple technology. Are they? Chen asked. Zilhan, would you share your latest analysis with the captain? The science officer looked nervously between her captain and the human on the screen. Sir, I've been studying their ship's construction during our conversation. The more I analyze it, the more sophisticated it becomes. Explain, Admiral Kethvar ordered. The hull appears simple, but it's actually a complex system of layers. Each layer is designed to defeat a different type of weapon. The outer layer dissipates energy weapons by converting the energy to heat and spreading it across the entire surface. The second layer is designed to stop kinetic projectiles using a honeycomb structure that absorbs impact. The third layer appears to be some kind of reactive armor. Reactive armor? It explodes outward when hit, deflecting the force of the impact away from the ship. But, sir, there are at least 6 more layers underneath that I can't fully analyze. Chen nodded approvingly. Very good analysis. Most species focus on making their weapons more powerful. We focused on making our defenses more complete. But why? Admiral Kethvar asked. Why not simply build more powerful weapons? Because, Admiral, defense is more efficient than offense. A weapon only works if it hits its target and penetrates. its defenses. But good armor works against every weapon that hits it. We learned long ago that it's better to survive your enemy's attack and then destroy them at your leisure. Vextar was beginning to understand the human approach, and it disturbed him. You're saying you deliberately chose defensive technology over offensive weapons? Not exactly, Chen replied. We chose balanced technology. Our weapons are quite effective, but we prioritize keeping our ships and crews alive. Dead warriors. Can't win battles. Show us, Admiral Kethvar demanded suddenly. If your weapons are so effective, demonstrate them. Chen looked surprised. Admiral, I don't think that's wise. I want to see what we're dealing with. Fire on one of our escort ships. Minimum power. Sir, Vexatar protested. The crew! The crew will evacuate to the other ships, the Admiral said grimly. Captain Chen, will you comply? Chen studied him for a moment. Very well, but I want your word that this is a demonstration only. No retaliation. Agreed. The bridge crew watched as the escort ship, Swift Strike, moved away from the main fleet. Its crew transferred to other vessels, leaving the ship operating on automatic systems. Target selected, Chen announced, firing one projectile from our main gun. Nothing visible happened. No energy beam, no missile trail, nothing that the Zilithian sensors could detect. Then, suddenly, the Swift Strike simply exploded. The ship didn't gradually take damage or slowly break apart. It vanished in a burst of fire and debris that expanded rapidly into space. Where a functioning warship had been moments before, only scattered metal fragments remained. The bridge of the Dominion's edge was silent for several seconds. What did you fire? Admiral Kethvar asked quietly. A simple kinetic projectile, Chen replied. A piece of dense metal accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed. Your shields are designed to deflect energy weapons and exotic matter. They don't stop ordinary objects moving very fast. How fast? Zilhan whispered. Fast enough, Chen said simply. Vextar stared at the debris field that had been a ship moments before. Your weapons are kinetic projectiles? Just pieces of metal? Enhanced pieces of metal, Chen corrected. The projectiles are made from dense materials and shaped for maximum penetration. But yes, fundamentally, they're just very fast rocks. That's impossible. No kinetic weapon can achieve that level of destruction. Chen's image smiled slightly. Captain, your people have spent thousands of years developing exotic matter manipulation and quantum field technology. Very impressive. But we spent those same thousands of years perfecting the art of throwing rocks very, very hard. Admiral Kethvar was studying the tactical display with new understanding. Your entire military doctrine is based on kinetic weapons? Not entirely, but primarily. Kinetic weapons are reliable, simple to maintain, and difficult to defend against. Energy weapons can be deflected by shields or absorbed by armor. Kinetic weapons just punch through everything in their path. But the power requirements, Vextar started, are manageable if you design your entire ship around the weapon system, Chen finished. Our ships are essentially large kinetic cannons with life support and defensive systems attached. Zilhan looked up from her sensors. Captain, I'm detecting energy buildups from the hidden ships in the asteroid field. They're targeting our vessels, the tactical officer confirmed. Multiple targeting beams focused on each of our ships. Chen's expression became serious. Admiral, my patience is running out. I've demonstrated our capabilities. I've offered you safe passage out of our territory. I strongly recommend you accept. And if we refuse, then this stops being a diplomatic encounter and becomes a military engagement. Admiral, you have approximately 30 seconds to make your decision. Admiral Kethvar looked around the bridge. His officers were staring at him with expressions of fear and uncertainty. The tactical display showed their 5 ships surrounded by an enemy force that had just demonstrated the ability to instantly destroy a Zilithian warship. Sir, Vextar said quietly, perhaps we should reconsider our options. Retreat? The Admiral asked bitterly. Return to the hegemony and report that we were driven off by primitives with rocks? With respect, sir, Zilhan spoke up. They're not primitives. Their technology is just as advanced as ours. It's simply based on different principles. Chen was watching them patiently, but Vextar could see tension in her shoulders. She was prepared for battle, and from what they had seen, her people were very good at it. 15 seconds, Chen announced. Admiral, Vextar said urgently, we need to withdraw. This was supposed to be a routine contact with a primitive species. Instead, we've discovered a major military threat. The hegemony needs to know about this. Admiral Kethvar nodded slowly. You're right, Captain. This information is too important to lose. He turned to face Chen. Captain Chen, we will withdraw from your territory. Excellent decision, Admiral. Please set course for the edge of the system. My ships will escort you to ensure there are no misunderstandings. Escort? Vextar asked. Standard procedure, Chen replied. We'll make sure you leave safely and don't take any detours to scan our defensive installations. As the Zilithian fleet began to move toward the edge of the system, Vextar noticed something on his sensors. Admiral, the human ships are moving. The hidden vessels in the asteroid field were emerging from their concealment. For the first time, Vextar could see them clearly. They were larger than he had expected, built along the same blocky, functional lines as the Perseverance. But these ships bristled with weapon emplacements. How many guns do they have? He muttered. I count over 200 weapon systems on each ship, the tactical officer reported. Multiple types, kinetic cannons, missile launchers, energy weapons, and several systems I can't identify. Chen noticed their attention. You seem surprised by our weapon loadout. Most ships carry one or two primary weapon systems, Admiral Kethvar said. Most ships are designed by people who think they know what kind of fight they're going to be in, Chen replied. We design our ships for the fights we can't predict. Multiple weapon systems, multiple defensive layers, multiple backup systems. If one approach doesn't work, we try another. That seems excessive. Admiral, my people have a saying. It's better to have it and not need it than to need it and not have it. We apply that philosophy to everything we build. As they traveled toward the edge of the system, Vextar continued to study the human ships. The more he learned about their design philosophy, the more it disturbed him. The Zilithians had always believed that technological advancement meant specialization and efficiency. These humans had taken the opposite approach, building ships that were adaptable and redundant. Captain Chen, he said finally, may I ask you a question? Of course. Why do you build your ships this way? Why not focus on perfecting one or two systems instead of trying to do everything? Chen was quiet for a moment. Captain, what kind of world do you come from? Zalithia Prime is a beautiful world. Stable climate, peaceful environment, abundant resources. Most of our colonies are like that too, Chen said. But Earth, our home world, is different. It's a dangerous place. Earthquakes, hurricanes, volcanoes, ice ages, asteroid impacts. On Earth, the environment itself tries to kill you on a regular basis. How does that affect your ship design? When you grow up on a world where anything can happen at any time, you learn to prepare for everything. Our ancestors survived because they were adaptable, because they had backup plans, because they never put. 3 weeks after their retreat from the Sol system, Captain Vextar stood in the war room of the Zilithian High Command. The massive chamber was filled with the Empire's highest military officials, all gathered to hear the report of humanity's capabilities. Fleet Admiral Kethvar finished his presentation and stepped back from the holographic display. The room buzzed with concerned voices as the assembled officers discussed what they had learned. Primitive kinetic weapons destroyed the Swift Strike in seconds, Admiral Kethvar repeated. Their defensive systems made our plasma cannons completely useless, and they had our entire fleet surrounded without us detecting them. Supreme Commander Velthara, the highest military authority in the Zilithian hegemony, studied the tactical data with growing concern. Her ancient face showed the wisdom of someone who had conquered dozens of star systems. "How many ships do they have?" she asked. "Unknown," Vextar replied. "We detected 19 in the Sol system, but Captain Chen implied there were more throughout. Their territory. Territory. How much space do they control? Based on our intelligence gathering, at least 12 star systems. Possibly more." Supreme Commander Velthara frowned. 12 systems would make them a significant regional power. Why didn't we detect them sooner? "Because they deliberately hid from us," Admiral Kethvar explained. "They've been broadcasting primitive radio signals and showing us simple spacecraft designs while secretly developing advanced military technology." "Advanced?" Another officer spoke up. "You said they use kinetic weapons and basic metals." "Basic materials, advanced engineering," Vextar corrected. "Their hull design is more sophisticated than anything we've seen. Multiple defensive layers, each designed to defeat different weapon types. But surely our fleet can overwhelm them through sheer numbers." Supreme Commander Velthara was quiet for a long moment. "How many ships would you estimate we need to defeat their 19 vessels?" Vextar exchanged glances with Admiral Kethvar. "Ma'am, based on what we observed, I would recommend at least 100 ships, possibly more." The room erupted in shocked voices. No primitive species had ever required such massive force to defeat. "Silence!" Velthara commanded. "Explain your reasoning, Captain." "Supreme Commander, their defensive capabilities are extraordinary. Our weapons were completely ineffective against their hull design. Meanwhile, their kinetic weapons can destroy our ships instantly. In a direct engagement, we would suffer massive casualties. What about our exotic matter weapons? Quantum disruptors? Surely those would be more effective than plasma cannons." "Unknown, ma'am. We didn't test those systems, but given their defensive philosophy, I suspect they have countermeasures prepared." Another officer stood up. "Supreme Commander, perhaps. We're overreacting. These humans may have good defenses, but they're still limited to basic technology. Our manufacturing capacity far exceeds theirs." Vextar shook his head. "Sir, I don't think that's accurate. While we were in their system, I noticed something disturbing about their ship construction." "Which was?" "Everything was designed for mass production. Simple, standardized components that could be manufactured quickly and cheaply. Their ships aren't elegant like ours, but they could probably build 10 of them in the time it takes us to build one." Supreme Commander Velthara absorbed this information. "You're suggesting they have superior industrial capacity?" "I'm suggesting they have a completely different approach to warfare. We build sophisticated ships with complex systems. They build simple, effective ships in large numbers." The discussion continued for hours. Intelligence reports were reviewed, tactical scenarios were analyzed, and strategic options were debated. But every conversation reached the same conclusion. Humanity represented a threat unlike anything the hegemony had encountered. "There is another option," said Admiral Drenkai, a specialist in unconventional warfare. "We could attempt to turn their allies against them." "Explain." "Captain Chen mentioned that some of our former subjects have joined with them, species we conquered and absorbed into the Empire. If we could convince those species to return to the hegemony—" "How?" Vextar asked. "They chose to ally with the humans instead of remaining under our rule. That suggests they prefer human leadership, or they fear human retaliation more than they fear us," Admiral Drenkai replied. "Fear can be a powerful motivator." Supreme Commander Velthara considered this. "What do we know about human treatment of their allies?" "Very little," Admiral Kethvar admitted. "But Captain Chen referred to them as liberated peoples rather than conquered subjects. This suggests a different relationship than we maintain with our subject species." "Different how?" "Unknown. We would need more intelligence to understand their political structure." The meeting was interrupted by an urgent communication from the border sectors. A junior officer appeared on the main screen, his face pale with fear. Supreme Commander, we're receiving reports from multiple border outposts. Unknown ships have been detected conducting reconnaissance of our territory. Human ships? Uncertain. Ma'am, the vessels match the design parameters reported from the Sol system encounter. Basic metal construction, simple energy signatures, but they're avoiding direct contact. Velthara stood up quickly. How many ships? Which sectors? At least 30 vessels spread across 8 different star systems. They appear to be conducting systematic scans of our defensive installations. The war room fell silent. Everyone understood the implications. The humans weren't waiting for the hegemony to make the next move. They were actively gathering intelligence for a possible conflict. Are they violating our territorial boundaries? Velthara asked. No, ma'am. They're staying in neutral space, but their sensors are clearly focused on our installations. How are they avoiding our patrols? The same way they hid in their own system, Vextar said grimly. Their ships don't show up on our sensors unless we specifically look for primitive technology signatures. Admiral Kethvar was studying the tactical display. Supreme Commander, this is a coordinated intelligence operation. 30 ships across 8 systems suggests they have a much larger fleet than we initially estimated. How much larger? If they can spare 30 ships for reconnaissance while maintaining defensive forces at home, I would estimate at least 200 ships total, possibly more. The number stunned the assembled officers. The Zilithian hegemony's entire military fleet consisted of approximately 800 ships spread across their territory. If the humans had 200 vessels concentrated in a small area, they represented a significant threat. Recommendations? Supreme Commander Velthara asked. We need more information, Admiral Kethvar said. Deploy intelligence-gathering missions to learn about their technology, their political structure, and their true military capabilities. And if they detect our reconnaissance efforts, then we'll learn something about their response protocols. Vextar had been studying the star charts during the discussion. Supreme Commander, there's something else we should consider. Speak. The location of their territory. They control the systems between us and the Rigel sector. If we wanted to expand in that direction, we would have to go through human space, Velthara finished, or negotiate passage rights. The hegemony has never negotiated with primitive species, Admiral Drenkai pointed out. They're not primitive, Vextar said firmly. That was our mistake. We assumed that simple technology meant inferior capability, but their simple technology is actually more effective than our complex systems. How is that possible? Because it works, Vextar replied. Our weapons are sophisticated, but they can be countered by equally sophisticated defenses. Their weapons are simple, but they're nearly impossible to defend against effectively. Supreme Commander Velthara was quiet for several minutes, studying the tactical data and intelligence reports. Finally, she spoke. I'm ordering a full military assessment of human capabilities. Deploy reconnaissance fleets to gather detailed intelligence on their technology, fleet strength, and defensive installations, but avoid direct confrontation. And if they respond aggressively to our intelligence gathering, Admiral Kethvar asked, then we'll know something important about their intentions. But for now, we treat them as a peer military power rather than a primitive species. The meeting began to break up as officers received their assignments. But Vextar remained behind to speak privately with Supreme Commander Velthara. Ma'am, there's one more thing, he said when they were alone. Yes? During our encounter, Captain Chen mentioned that they've been monitoring our expansion for 50 years. That means they've been planning for this confrontation for decades. Your point? Everything that happened in the Sol system was carefully orchestrated. They knew exactly how we would respond to a primitive species, and they used our assumptions against us. The question is, what else have they planned? Supreme Commander Velthara stared at the star chart showing human territory. You think this is all part of a larger strategy? I think we're dealing with a species that's very good at long-term planning. And if they've been preparing for us for 50 years... Vextar paused. We may already be at a severe disadvantage. Thaba. Supreme Commander nodded slowly. Then we'd better learn everything we can about them quickly. As Vextar left the war room, he couldn't shake the feeling that 2 months after the first encounter, Captain Vextar commanded a specialized reconnaissance fleet tasked with gathering intelligence on human capabilities. His orders were clear: observe, analyze, and avoid direct confrontation. The hegemony needed to understand their new enemy before deciding how to proceed. "Captain, we're approaching the outer edge of human territory," reported Commander Zilhan. She had requested assignment to this mission after studying the initial contact data. No ships detected on sensors. Use the new scanning protocols, Vextar ordered. Look for primitive technology signatures. The bridge crew worked with equipment specifically modified to detect the type of ships humans used. After their previous encounter, Zilithian scientists had realized their sensors were designed to ignore exactly the kind of technology humans employed. "Contact," announced the tactical officer. "Human vessel detected at the edge of the system. Same basic design as before. Just one ship?" "That's all I'm detecting, sir." Vextar studied the tactical display. A single human ship patrolling the border seemed like an opportunity to gather more detailed intelligence. "Begin long-range scanning. I want to know everything about that vessel." The reconnaissance fleet maintained its distance while sophisticated. Sensors probed the human ship, but after several minutes, something unexpected happened. "Sir," Zilhan said nervously, "they're scanning us back. Impossible. We're using stealth systems. Their scans are penetrating our concealment. They know exactly where we are." Before Vextar could respond, his communications officer announced an incoming transmission. "Captain, the human ship is calling us." "Put it through." The main screen showed the bridge of the human vessel. A different captain this time, an older man with gray hair and calm eyes. "This is Captain James Rodriguez of the UES Vigilance. You are conducting unauthorized reconnaissance in Terran space." "We are in neutral territory," Vextar replied carefully. "Captain, your ships crossed into our territorial boundary 14 minutes ago. Did your sensors not detect the marker beacons?" Vextar looked at his science officer, who quickly checked her readings. "Sir, I'm detecting several small objects broadcasting low-power signals. They're using basic radio frequencies." "Marker. Beacons using primitive technology," Captain Rodriguez explained. "We've learned that more advanced civilizations often ignore simple warning systems. So we use technology that everyone can detect, regardless of their scanning capabilities. We received no warning, because your computers are programmed to filter out primitive signals as background noise," Rodriguez said with a slight smile. "Another advantage of simple technology. It's harder to ignore." Vextar realized they had walked into another carefully prepared demonstration. "What do you want?" "I want you to withdraw from Terran space immediately. You've already gathered the intelligence you came for." "What intelligence?" "You've confirmed that we maintain active patrols along our borders. You've tested whether we can detect your stealth systems. And you've learned that we're monitoring your reconnaissance efforts." Rodriguez paused. "Was there anything else you needed to know?" The directness of the human captain was unsettling. Most species tried to hide their capabilities during intelligence-gathering operations. The humans seemed to be deliberately revealing information. "Captain Rodriguez," Vextar said, "may I ask why you're being so cooperative?" "Because transparency prevents misunderstandings, Captain. We know you're trying to assess our military capabilities. We'd rather show you the truth than let you base your decisions on incomplete information." "And what is the truth?" Rodriguez gestured to someone off-screen, and the image changed to show a tactical display of the local area. Vextar stared in shock as dozens of human ships became visible on the screen. "The truth is that you've been surrounded since you entered our territory. Rodriguez explained. "We've been tracking your fleet for the past 6 hours." Zilhan quickly ran new scans using the modified protocols. "Captain, I'm detecting 43 human vessels. They're positioned throughout the system. 43 ships to intercept our reconnaissance fleet of 12 vessels?" Vexatar asked. "Standard procedure," Rodriguez replied. "We don't take chances with unknown contacts in our territory." "This seems like an excessive response." "Does it?" "Captain, your people fired on one of our ships during first contact. From our perspective, any Zilithian vessels in our territory represent a potential threat." Vextar studied the tactical display. The human ships were positioned to prevent any escape route. His fleet was completely trapped, but the humans weren't taking aggressive action. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now you withdraw from our territory and report back to your superiors. But first, I have a message for the Zilithian High Command." "I'm listening." Rodriguez looked directly into the camera. "The Terran Federation is prepared to establish diplomatic relations with the Zilithian hegemony. We're willing to discuss trade agreements, territorial boundaries, and mutual defense treaties, but we will not tolerate military incursions into our space. And if the hegemony chooses military action instead of diplomacy, then we will defend ourselves." Rodriguez's expression became serious. "Captain, I want you to understand something. The ships you've encountered so far represent less than 5% of the Terran Federation Navy." 5%? "We maintain defensive fleets in all 12 of our star systems, plus mobile task forces for offensive operations. What you've seen is just our border patrol." Vextar felt his blood run cold. If the humans were telling the truth, their military was far larger than anyone in the hegemony had estimated. "How many ships do you have?" he asked quietly. "Enough," Rodriguez replied simply. The transmission ended as the human fleet began moving into escort positions around Vexatar's reconnaissance force. Once again, the Zilithians found themselves being escorted out of human territory by overwhelming numbers of enemy ships. During the journey to the border, Vextar had time to study the human vessels more carefully. What he saw disturbed him even more than their numbers. Zilhan analyzed the construction of those escort ships. "Already working on it, sir. Captain, these aren't the same class of vessel we encountered before." "Different how?" "They're larger, more heavily armed, and they're showing design improvements. Over the ships from the Sol system, it's like they've been refining their technology based on what they learned from our encounter." "How much time has passed since first contact?" 2 months, sir." "They've improved their ship designs in 2 months?" "It appears so. The hull configuration is more efficient, the weapon placement is optimized, and I'm detecting new defensive systems that weren't present on the earlier vessels." Vextar realized what this meant. While the hegemony was still trying to understand human capabilities, the humans were actively improving their technology. They weren't just preparing for war, they were getting better at it. "Sir," the communications officer called out, "Incoming transmission from Supreme Commander Velthara." The main screen showed the Supreme Commander's concerned face. "Captain Vextar, report your status." "We're being escorted out of human territory, ma'am. Mission partially successful." "Explain." "We've confirmed that human military capabilities exceed our initial estimates. They detected our stealth systems, surrounded our fleet, and demonstrated superior numbers, but they allowed us to withdraw without engagement." "How many ships did they deploy?" 43 vessels to intercept our 12-ship reconnaissance force." Supreme Commander Velthara was quiet for a moment. "That seems like a significant overreaction." "Ma'am, I don't think it was an overreaction. I think it was a message." "What kind of message?" "That they have the ships to spare. Deploying 43 vessels against a reconnaissance mission suggests they have hundreds more available for actual combat operations." The Supreme Commander studied the tactical data that Vextar was transmitting. "These ship designs are different from your initial contact." "Yes, ma'am. They've been improving their technology since our first encounter. In 2 months, they've made significant upgrades to their vessels." 2 months? Our ship development programs take years. Theirs apparently don't. Ma'am, I'm beginning to think we've seriously underestimated human industrial and technological capabilities. Explain. They're not just building simple ships quickly. They're continuously improving the designs and implementing the improvements across their fleet. That suggests a level of industrial coordination and technological development that rivals our own. Supreme Commander Velthara absorbed this information. Captain, in your professional opinion, what would be the outcome of a direct military confrontation with the Terran Federation? Vextar looked around his bridge at the officers who had witnessed the human demonstrations of capability. Ma'am, based on what we've observed, I believe a military confrontation would result in massive casualties for the hegemony. Possibly defeat. Even with our technological advantages? Ma'am, I'm no longer certain we have technological advantages. We have different technology, but theirs appears to be more effective for military applications. The communication ended as Vextar's fleet reached the edge of human territory. Captain Rodriguez appeared on screen one final time. Captain Vextar, please deliver this message to your high command. The